Nintendo waited 12 years to finally make a sequel to Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube, and when they did for the 3DS being Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, a lot of people saw it as a downgrade from the original. It was a completely different formula and changed what made the original so great. The creepy, scary, open-endedness of Luigi's Mansion was now changed to a mission-based, less creepy, new version of the game we all know and love. Just 4 years later on the Nintendo Switch for us to get Luigi's Mansion 3, which to me is my favorite in the trilogy and one of the best games I've ever played from Nintendo. But with that said, Luigi's Mansion 2 would see the light one more time, as it comes out as a remaster on Nintendo Switch years after Luigi's Mansion 3. We now go back to the black sheep of the franchise, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, well now deemed Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. And today I wanted to dive back to really see, is this game really that bad? Every day online, I see a lot of people place this game in the same category as others like Yoshi's New Island, Hey Pikmin, Metroid Prime Federation Force, and even The Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes. So is Luigi's Mansion 2 really that bad? Well, today we're gonna find out. And to find out, I will be talking specifically of the remaster version on Nintendo Switch, not the original 3DS version. So in order to start this whole debacle and try to figure out, does it deserve its black sheep placement in the trilogy, let's start off by talking about the way the game actually presents itself. Now, graphically and performance-wise, this is a hard game to talk about because we are not talking about just the original game here, but the actual remaster from the original game. So, leave Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon out of your mind for right now. This specific segment is for the remaster. So, let me tell you right now, this game is kind of ugly. I know lots of assets have been changed, lots of assets have been moved around and flipped around and, obviously replaced with maybe some better looking assets and spots. But comparing to another game on the same console, it's really bad, and that game being Luigi's Mansion 3. Luigi's Mansion 3 is one of the most technically impressive games on the Switch, and I think even just recently won an award for it being so technically impressive. So when you wait a couple years later and release the game that came before it on the same console, and it's a remaster, you'd expect the game to look just as good. And Luigi's Mansion 2 is very ugly at places. As the original game holds up very well on a handheld 3DS, this game feels like it's still a 3DS game. There's a lot of rooms and areas where I feel like it still just looks like a 3DS game. Lots of the assets are plasticky and blocky around the edges, and even some of the spider webs are just big papery looking objects that just kind of look strange still. One big complaint when the game came out that still plagues the original on the 3DS is the game is just a little too bright. There's too many situations where it feels like it needs to be creepy or is trying to be creepy, and there's just too much light coming in. Do you remember how dark and dim the first Luigi's Mansion was? It really felt scary, and it had that presence that Luigi was truly in a haunted mansion, and he had to figure out what to do in order to get out and save his brother. Where this time, it feels more lighthearted. It's just a lot more bright, and for the most part, the entirety of the time you're in these mansions, the lights are gonna be on. In fact, each room is only dark until you capture all the ghosts in the room, which probably only takes about 30 seconds to a minute, and then that room stays lit the entirety of the time. That includes all the future missions that you'll spend within that respected mansion. And I know that's kind of how it works in the first game, to an extent, because instead of collecting the ghost and the lights turning on, you had to complete an entire floor or the entire area and defeat that area's main boss before all the lights turned on, which meant you never needed to go back to that area because ghosts would not spawn in rooms that have light. So it didn't make sense to have all these bright lit rooms and ghosts to spawn for no reason. The animation is also no better. There's times Luigi's animations will just sometimes be straight up paused or look blocky and just freeze in the middle of him talking or doing something, and this happens with other characters as well. There's situations where the animations will just pause and just flip to the next animation, and it will just kind of be jarring the first time you see it. It's technically a minor complaint, but it's still a strange one to have on a Nintendo Switch home console. Another thing that kind of bothered me is every now and then there'd be a room where the ghost just kind of appeared on screen with absolutely no animation. They would just pop in, and it was just so strange. It was like some weird pop-in you'd get from Sonic Frontiers level design or something. Yeah, and it was just kind of jarring, and this this is something that didn't happen all that often, but it did happen a couple times where I did notice it, and it was just strange. For the most part, the ghosts do fly in from some type of environment thing, like pipes or holes in the wall, or just kind of appear from underneath the ground or something, and it looks normal, but there were some situations where I was just like, where did he come from? And it's actually very funny that this is a complaint of mine, because I'm a type of person who really doesn't care about this stuff. I don't care about the graphics and the way a game runs. As long as it runs smooth and there's no hiccups, I'm normally good to go. And I honestly felt like one of the biggest problems is that it comes after Luigi's Mansion 3. Luigi's Mansion 3, being the technical marvel that it is, should not be followed up with a game that came before it and looks worse and runs worse. It just doesn't make sense. I know technically people can do the math in their head and say this is Luigi's Mansion 2, it's supposed to be worse, but not everybody's going to say that. They're going to say this is the game that's coming out after Luigi's Mansion 3, so it should look as good, if not better, than Luigi's Mansion 3. And it looks significantly worse. And what's even more strange is this game had a lot of time to cook. I mean, it was revealed like at the end of the year last year, almost the middle of the year last year, and almost a year later it would release. So I'm wondering what happened and how it took so long for it to look so underwhelming. But with the presentation not being the best, it's also kind of insane that this game is priced at a whopping $60. This is the same price, once again, as Luigi's Mansion 3, and other games that look extremely good, like Super Mario Odyssey, and even Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. How in the world is that possible? And that is an issue, of course, for another video, and we talk about this all the time. Nintendo's pricing is very, very strange. But if people are paying $20 extra for the same 3DS game that came out years ago, it's just slightly enhanced with actually nothing new added as well, which we'll get into at the end of this video, it should not be priced at $60, and they definitely should have done more to this game, at least graphic-wise. Now, before I dive into the gameplay and the meat of the game, I thought I'd talk about the story real quick, because there's not much to talk about. It's a very simple ghost story, where we have Egad actually researching ghosts in Evershade Valley, which is just like this ghost vacation zone for these ghosts, I guess, and Egad's there researching, and all the ghosts are kept under control by something called the Dark Moon in the sky. Well, King Boo somehow found a way out and actually breaks down the Dark Moon, causing all the ghosts to freak out and go absolute berserk, and Egad is left with no choice but to call in the one that helped him in the first game, Luigi. And you're pretty much going to all the different mansions within Evershade Valley, being 5 different mansions, in order to hunt down these ghosts and collect all the pieces of the Dark Moon. There is some slight story build up in the middle of the game where you do see a painting of Mario, but it's pretty hilarious because they act like they don't know who it is. When they see the shoes, when they see the overalls, and even the M cap, both Egad and Luigi have no clue who it is in the picture, which absolutely upsets me, because I'm like, how? It gets to the point where it's honestly like ridiculous. Like after the 3rd time of seeing the frame and you see Mario's hat, the fact that no one even makes an educated guess as to what's happening is kind of insane. Even when they see the back of King Boo, they don't know who it is. They're like, what's going on here? And then they have to wait for King Boo to turn around for them to say, oh shoot, it's King Boo, like the giant crown on his head didn't give it away. And they don't even really explain in-game how did King Boo get out. I know there's some dialogue, I think eventually, that does explain it, but they don't really talk about it during the basis of the story. How King Boo's here. How did he get Mario? Where did Mario get captured? When did Mario get captured? How come Luigi doesn't know about this? It's just kind of like all happening randomly, just for the sake of it telling a story that no one really cares about. I think one of the main reasons this story isn't very interesting is due to the fact that there's no portrait ghosts in this game. I mean, in fact, you'll only get technically 3 which work together as one boss, being the 3 sisters in the Haunted Towers, but they're not really considered portrait ghosts. All the ghosts are just basic different colored ghosts, and even the possessor ghosts are just white ghosts that possess different things in order for you to fight them in a boss battle. So the lack of portrait ghosts really takes away from any type of story or any type of development that they could make with any of the mansions. It would have been really cool if all the mansions had different portrait ghosts, because they were so vastly different. You had one based on gardening. You could have had the gardening ghost from Luigi's Mansion 3 here, or just other types of gardening ghosts, or ghosts representative of some type of tree area or forest. You had the old Clockworks that could have had some specific ghost there, or even a snow-themed area, which we haven't gotten in the first game or even the 3rd game. Well, technically. I know we had Sir Weston in the first game, but something like that could have been really cool, like a mountain climber ghost or some type of igloo ice ghost or snowman ghost would have been really cool to see. And I think the lack of portrait ghost really does affect the story as well. I'll bring this up again as we talk about the gameplay and talk about the actual in-game bosses, because it shines through that this game is missing something, and that is a very vital part. Thankfully, Nintendo brought the portrait ghost back, or what you could call boss ghost, in Luigi's Mansion 3, which is something that gave that game such positive reception, and it's definitely something that this game was missing and could have tied into the story a lot more. But overall, it's a very simple story from start to finish. There's really no characterization or growth with any of the characters or development. For instance, one thing I was really hoping to see is every single time Luigi gets pixelized into one of the mansions, he's terrified every time, and you'd think after the 50th time he would understand how it works and be pretty fine with it. And even Egad throws in a joke, but at the same time, the joke was funny, but it never got better. I would have really loved to see, like, towards the last mission of the game, Luigi kind of have this confidence on his face, like, let's do this. It's something that I really loved from Mario & Luigi Dream Team, where Luigi had this confident look on his face, where normally he was terrified when he had to grow big in the dream world in order to fight something like Bowser, but at the very end of the game, he musters his courage, and even his face has this smirk of, let's do this, bro. And it's something that I was really hoping to see come through in this game, where every single time, he's just terrified. I don't know, I would have liked to seen some type of different animation, and to me, it was just probably laziness in the development, where the developers didn't want to animate a new scene for this. They just kept it the same from start to finish. But once again, a small minor complaint, but something that I would have liked to seen that could have tied into a bigger and grander story, at least giving Luigi more characterization. But overall, it's a spin-off Mario game with Luigi about catching ghosts, and it's the second game in the series, so do they really need a super in-depth story? No, they don't. Luigi's Mansion 1 didn't really have a super dark story, and neither did Luigi's Mansion 3. But the deepest parts of their story definitely came through with the portrait ghosts, which had their own little dialogue and bio with them, kind of explaining who they were and where they came from, and kind of some backstory to each one, which added some story elements to a game that didn't have great story, and that's all I'm saying that the game was missing. Now, I want to go through each and every single mansion in great detail and talk about them on a gameplay standpoint, and talk about what I thought about each one and the mission structure of each one, which you can probably guess where that's going. But I want to start talking about all that stuff with, of course, the first mansion in the game, the Gloomy Manor. This location is a small kind of tutorial mansion to get you started. It is a mansion after all, very similar to the first game, but a lot smaller and a lot less detailed with a lot less rooms as well. It is essentially just a lesser version of the first game's mansion, just to a very small scale. And one thing you'll notice, of course, starting the game, like I just said, is there is a mission structure to this game, which means you can't just freely roam throughout the mansion, and when you complete it, you're done, which actually would have been pretty cool for 5 different mansions in this game. But instead, you have to go into the mansion for an individual mission and complete that mission by going through a specific set of rooms, and once you're done with that mission, you get warped back into Egad's lab, you go through some things, and go back in for the next mission, which is extremely annoying. It very much slows the pace of the game, and it makes it extremely annoying when you've already visited rooms and areas of a mansion, and you have to go back there for mission 2, just because that mission requires you to do so. And going through the same room, looking for the same treasure over and over again is very annoying. And yes, there are multiple times where you have to go back to past rooms in order to get a special golden bone, or in order to get a specific gold bar, or just treasure that you'll need in order to get a 3-star rank. Some mansions are big enough to give each mission its own rooms and dedicated areas, but something like the Gloomy Manor, which is overall a pretty small mansion, you'll be going through the same hallways with the same knights, the same bathrooms and bedrooms over and over and over again, to the point where it just gets annoying. You want to move on, see other things, go to new places, and this game just doesn't let you do that, at least for the Gloomy Manor. Like I said, this area serves as a tutorial for Luigi, first finding the Poltergeist itself, the new version that is, and then finding the strobe light and the dark light. This game actually adds something called the strobe light, which means you have to flash the ghosts before actually sucking them up. Not like that. I felt like the strobe light is a humongous upgrade from the first game. This actually allows you to stop the ghost in their tracks, which then allows you to suck them up. One of my biggest complaints about the original game is getting that light to actually stay on the ghost, because if you slightly move it, the ghost would disappear. It was a weird feeling, and it just didn't feel tactile. Like, it didn't feel like you were actually doing something, you were just looking at them. Where this strobe light actually makes you do something before capturing the ghost, and I still believe it's my favorite way to capture ghosts in the entire trilogy. It just feels quick, easy, and very intuitive. You still have that reel-in feeling of reeling in a ghost, but this time when you fill up the bar of reeling him in, you can super suck him in by pressing the A button once that bar is full. Eventually you'll get 2 and even 3 bars once you level up the Poltergeist, which is really cool, giving you even more suction power, taking down some of the bigger ghosts faster. I love this, and it still has that feeling of the original, but just with a little bit of an upgrade that the game desperately needed. The Dark Light is also a really awesome new feature, and it's used a ton in this game. I mean, genuinely, almost every single mission, in almost every single room, there's somewhere that you can use the dark light in order to find things that you need, and maybe some extras that you don't necessarily need, but it's fun finds for some extra treasure or hearts or stuff like that. But yes, it is definitely needed, and you'll even need it to take out the boos in this game, which is also done a lot better. I'll get into that in a second, but yes, just using the dark light to find hidden doors and hidden vases and furniture was always just a very satisfying feeling. The Gloomy Manor's missions overall, at least the first like 3, are pretty boring. You're just going through rooms, tracking down gear, and barely even fighting any ghosts. Like when you do, you're just looking for gear pieces in different rooms, which is something that you'll do a lot in this game. Looking for 4 or 5 of something that's spread out across the mansion itself, and you're just going in rooms trying to collect them all in order to progress for the next mission. The problem with these is a lot of these missions just feel like busy work, and they don't make sense in the grand scheme of things. You'll literally have a mission where you need to suck up 43 spider webs in the mansion. Yes, it might feel satisfying to clear a room full of spider webs, and at least they tell you what rooms have the webs still, but it's just boring and it just doesn't make sense. I should be capturing ghosts and finding out where the heck Mario is, even though at this time I guess they don't know that Mario's captured, but still, my goal is to find the piece of the Dark Moon here and take out King Boo. Why am I sucking up spider webs? It genuinely just doesn't make sense, and I guess it's to help us progress further, but even some of the smaller spider webs in the corner of the rooms and stuff, it's just like, why can't I just leave that there? Is Luigi the housemaid or something? My wife just got done playing through the first game and really enjoyed it, so she was very excited to start Luigi's Mansion 2, and when I told her what she actually had to do in this mission, she literally looked at me and said, "Are you kidding me?" Yeah, cleaning out the rooms for spider webs is just strange, especially when it's just going through rooms you've already visited and just sucking up some webs. It didn't make sense, and it just didn't feel like a Luigi's Mansion thing to me. You do get a little look at the main ghost types from this mansion, being the greenies, which are just these little green ghosts that will sometimes have objects in their hands or helmets and stuff, sunglasses, and it's just your basic ghost for this game. The red ghosts are the big ones that slam the ground and cause shock waves, and the blue ones are the ones that hide in various different objects around the room, and then of course you have your poltergeist battles, which we'll get into that in a second. Occasionally you'll come across a boo, and it's handled way better than the first game. Oh my goodness. In the first game, the boos would jump from room to room, and they didn't even feel right when you were trying to suck them into the vacuum. You were just kind of sucking random areas of the room trying to grab them, and it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel that tactile feeling of actually sucking something into the vacuum. But this time, they can't leave the room, and you can hear them laughing in order to find them. You just have to use your dark light in a specific room. I guess the only bad part is there's one per mission, so a lot of the time you're gonna have to make sure you find that boo, or you're gonna have to replay the mission all over again just to find the single room. But it's simple. You shine them with your dark light, they appear, and then you grab them by the tongue and fling them across the room, watching them bounce to and fro and actually collecting the coins from them. It's fun, it's easy, it's simple, and it doesn't take a lot of time in order to capture these things. Once again, a lot better than the first game. I'd say if someone is going into this game, my biggest kind of advice that I could give is use the dark light in every single room throughout the entire room to make sure there's no hidden objects. Then you probably will never miss a boo. There's a couple instances, I think maybe 1 or 2 in the entire game, where I missed one and had to go back. So yes, just use your dark light like your life depends on it. You will have a mini boss for most of the mansions. This includes the Poltergeist, which are these new forms of ghosts with giant heads and brains. it's a pretty good start to the game for a mini boss. It's nothing crazy where they're just kind of playing the piano and chucking library books at you. That's pretty much all it is. They're going around the room invisible and throwing things at you, and you have to randomly flash your light in order to randomly capture them, and yeah, that's really about it. Like I said, it's nothing special. It's still not a portrait or boss ghost, but I will take it at the very least. But then we have the main boss battle of the Gloomy Manor, and this is where we get to the possessor ghosts. These are white ghosts that actually possess different things. I love this idea. Now, if these were just portrait or boss ghosts with variety and personality, then it'd be even better, and we can see kind of elements of this in Luigi's Mansion 3, such as Captain Fishhook, which was a shark-themed ghost who still possessed things like the pirate ship itself, which was pretty cool. So I like the whole possession thing, and it's a really unique thing for a boss battle, and this unfortunately was the best boss in the game for me, at least one of the best bosses in the game, which shows you that it definitely declines from here. But I love the mechanics of the mansion actually being used here, the spider webs and burning them and actually grabbing little pieces of spider webs in the spider web ball in order to set it on fire and try to chase it down to the giant spider web on the back wall. I thought these were really cool, adding puzzle elements to a boss battle, because at the end of the day, Luigi's Mansion is a puzzle game. It's not just about collecting ghosts, solving and completing unique puzzles, and the fact that this was incorporated into a boss battle was really good and a perfect way to start the game with something like this. It just got my hopes way too high for the rest of the bosses in this game. But all the bosses are essentially the same after you take out the main possessive item, where the possessor ghost will fly out and then charge you very slowly. It's incredibly easy to dodge. You just walk out of the way of the path that he's charging you at and then flash him and suck him up, and you'll have to do this 3 times. Overall, Gloomy Manor was an okay start to the game. It didn't have that creepy, gigantic, mansion-y vibe that the first game had, that was full of life and unique and individual characters and boss ghosts. This time, it just felt like a mansion ran by a bunch of little kid ghosts playing around and teasing Luigi. It still was fun to an extent to find all the items and learn how they work, like the dark light and the strobe light, but there was a lot of busy work in this mansion, such as cleaning up 43 spiderwebs. Nintendo, what were you thinking with that one? But yeah, with the occasional ghost here and there, I really wish there was just more to do in this mansion, but I get it. It served its purpose as a tutorial mansion, but thankfully, the mansions do get better as we move on from here. Now for the second area, this is one of my favorites in the entire game, being the Haunted Towers. This was a very unique area because it was 2 giant towers that interconnected from bridges and different sections, going from the left tower to the right tower, back and forth, and even seeing some of the outside area was pretty cool. Something that I don't even know how I was able to forget from the Gloomy Manor is something that continued to bother me, however, moving into something that was a lot better with the Haunted Towers, which was EGAD. Yes, in this game, EGAD will call you unbelievable amounts. Like seriously, every single mission, at least 5 or 6 times a mission, maybe even more than that in the beginning of the game, he will ring you every single time you do anything of importance. If you find a key, he'll call you. If you find a secret room, he'll call you. If you collect treasure, he'll call you. He will call you every single instance he has the opportunity to, which is just so annoying. It completely pauses the pace of the game. It's not like a quick dialogue box that you can just skip and move on. Luigi will have the animation where he'll stand still, the music will play, he'll open the DS and talk to EGAD, close the DS and move on, and this happens way too much in this game, so much so it genuinely made me verbally sigh every single time this happened, and I was already annoyed with it by the end of the first mansion. But that's just something that I had to throw out there because it's something that just definitely needed to stop, and thankfully in the third game it is something that's completely gone. But back to the Haunted Towers. I didn't want to get too much on EGAD's shenanigans of calling Luigi, but I really like this tower and the usage of water. It uses these buckets of water in order to grow certain things, whether it be spiked fruits in order to shoot at Venus flytraps, or those ball berries that you can grow in order to fly up with a brand new mechanic, getting you to higher elevations. I really love just using the bucket of water just to grow things. I know it sounds silly, but it actually was used in some really good ways here. This mansion, however, suffers from the same problem as the first one, being the mission structure, and it kind of making you go through past rooms over and over and over again instead of feeling like a progression of finding nothing but new rooms each mission. One thing I really haven't touched on yet is the gyms, and this is an example of where you'll actually really get hit hard with this game's structure, because there are a lot of gyms that you have to go back and find in previous rooms even when you're on the next missions. There are 13 gyms in every single mansion in this game, and these are some very hard gyms to find. I'll talk more about this later on, but this is a case of where it gets really annoying because once again, you go through a certain set of floors and you're ready to move on to the next set of floors when you're on mission 2 or mission 3. However, they might hide some gyms in those past floors, which means every single mission you'll have to go through every single room over and over and over and over again just to make sure you didn't miss any gold or missed any gems, which is a huge bother. I do not like that at all. Like I said, if you're still confused, I'll go into even deeper details later about that, but it is just annoying and I really didn't enjoy it. The mid-boss of this mansion are the 3 sisters, and I think it's done absolutely horribly. You literally just have to let them roll around Luigi and eventually they'll lower their mirrors, allowing you to flash one and have to capture one sister as the other 2 are trying to brutally attack Luigi. This is just really bad because in turn you're just pretty much going to have one of the sisters drag you and not even try to suck her up just to dodge the attacks of the others. Also, there's a whole hop you can do by pressing the B button, which isn't in any of the other 2 Luigi's Mansion games, and if I'm not mistaken, EGAD does not tell you about this move at all. He literally talks non-stop in this game, but never tells you that you have a little hop that you can do when sucking up a ghost, and it actually helps if you know this going into it, but if you don't, you're just going to keep getting blasted by the other sisters as you're trying to capture one of them, which, like I said, is just so annoying. Another new thing that this mansion throws at you for the first time is a Toad mission. These are not great, where you have to take a Toad all the way back to the teleporter in order to return him to the lab to EGAD, because EGAD sent these Toads out because he's an absolutely horrible boss. But yes, he sent these Toads just to pretty much get themselves captured, and you have to guide them as if they are literally small children, like babies at this point. Some Toads hate to walk in short water. Literally, ankle-high water they won't walk in, so you have to carry them over. Or some Toads don't like to walk on ice, so you have to carry them over. Some Toads are literally afraid of clocks, so you have to hold them the entire time. But they're always running around the room like crazy, and just trying to get them to stop is sometimes super annoying. You have to walk up and sometimes literally intentionally suck them up into your vacuum and chuck them around the room just to get their attention, because they're too busy sprinting around in circles, and it's just annoying. Thankfully, in the Haunted Towers, it wasn't too bad because there weren't too many ghosts or too many things that you had to do with Toad, because it was simply just take him to the teleporter. I promise you, these definitely become more and more annoying the further we get into this game. You start to feel like a babysitter, and a lot of the time, some of the things with Toad just simply doesn't work like it's supposed to. Another room that I really enjoyed was the creepy Dollhouse room, and this was like one of the first real moments of the entire game that gave me instant Luigi's Mansion 1 vibes, and it was actually very creepy, and I wish they would have done more things like this and actually built on this room more, with the doll baby head just following you as it spins in circles, and just looking into the mansion house in order to find where the ghost is actually hiding, and even getting a little bit of a jump scare was something that I really did enjoy. I wish they really pushed this and did more of this in this game and had more of those Luigi's Mansion 1 creepy vibes, and I really enjoyed this area because of that. One mission I absolutely did not like, once again, is revisiting past rooms with the Polterpup chases. Polterpup will come in and take a key or some type of important item, and you'll have to circle through all the rooms that you've already visited, fighting ghosts in order to find Polterpup by just shining your dark light and following the paw prints. This means you'll be going through the same 10 rooms once again over and over and over again, and by doing this, it really makes you feel like you're not making any new progress. You're not finding new locations, you're not experiencing new things. Instead, you're just stuck in the same set of rooms doing basic tasks like finding spider webs or looking for a dog. Yeah, that is a big gripe of mine with this game. It's just the repetitive nature of revisiting and revisiting and revisiting. But let's move on to the final boss of this area. I know I've made it seem like this area wasn't that great, but I still enjoyed it. Like I said, the theming around it was really cool, and I love going inside and outside of the mansion, but unfortunately, it also does not end very well, because the final boss of the Haunted Towers was rough. For one, you have to play a game of climbing up up like 20 flights of stairs over and over and over again, because if you mess up, you have to restart from the bottom flight. Your job is to pay attention to the torches as they're being lit to figure out what stairs you're supposed to go up. And naturally, you're probably going to mess up at least 4 times, like at the very least, because it's just impossible for your eyes and your brain to remember all the torches that you're supposed to, you know, go to those flights of stairs to make yourself up. It's a whole thing, and it's a lot. But yes, once you finally reach it to the top, that wasn't even that bad to me. I thought it was kind of funny how they threw that in there. It's the actual boss battle that I just could not believe. When you had the first ghost actually possess a spider, this time the ghost possesses stairs. I kid you not, some stairs, like a small flight of stairs at that. It is one of the easiest, one of the most boring boss battles I have ever played from a Nintendo game. Okay, that might be a long stretch, I know. Let me say one of the, because I don't know if it's the worst, but it's pretty daggone bad. And I have not played a boss this brain dead in a very long time. And I've played through the Yoshi's Crafted games. Yeah, that tells you something. But what were they thinking here? I don't understand the point of this. The attacks from the stairs are so incredibly slow. You could seriously just walk away. The whole gimmick is just pulling a cord. They didn't utilize any of the things from this mansion, like the buckets of water, the spiked balls that you can fire into the piranha plant's mouths. Why didn't they do something like this? I mean, they did for the spider. They incorporated the burning of the webs into the actual boss fight. It feels like they just gave up on this one. I mean, I would love to see like a giant Venus flytrap that the ghost possessed, and it was our job to water a plant in order to grow one of those spiked balls and fire it into his mouth or something. It was something like that that just made sense to me, because it was like based off of gardening. The whole towers were like based off of gardening. The mini boss was 3 gardening sisters. How did we just end up fighting some stairs? Yeah, it was a pretty sour ending to a really cool themed world, but still had its issues with backtracking. But overall, the Haunted Towers was still my favorite design-wise, but it just wasn't executed the best, and it had a very bad boss battle to end it, one of the worst in a very long time for me. I will say though, the music here is one of my favorites in the entire game. Every single mansion for the most part is the same rendition of Gloomy Manor, just repeated in different ways. I just found this one to be one of my favorites. It was more deep and in-depth and intense than the rest, and it kind of gave you a creepier vibe than most of the other renditions I've heard so far. But Haunted Towers had a good concept, it just needed better execution, and hopefully Old Clockworks is a lot better. The Old Clockworks, believe it or not, felt like the quickest and easiest mansion of the entire bunch. This one kind of took place in an abandoned mine filled with sand, so there was lots of puzzles that dealt with taking out sand and using the sand or looking at the sand in order to track down ghosts. And I have really no real bad complaints about this one. In fact, I really liked the vibes of this one. The sounds and just everything in the atmosphere was very creepy with this one. When you start the mission outside of the Clockworks each time, it played this very eerie sound, and just hearing the sand go across, it was just something that definitely gave me chills, and I loved it. It also had some pretty dark and creepy areas that we wouldn't see in the rest of the game. For instance, when you go underground into the catacombs where the mummies are, it gets very dark down there. So much so where you need fire in order just to see a couple feet in front of you. And this, to me, is Luigi's Mansion. Just pure darkness. I love that. As far as the theming for the rest of the place when you're actually inside the Clockworks above ground, it's nothing too impressive. It just looks like an abandoned factory, and there's really nothing to really catch my eyes or make me say, ooh, this was pretty unique. Yeah, it was just like a broken building with sand flowing in through the broken windows, and it never really went past the, oh, this looks like an abandoned factory or some type of abandoned mine. It never really went that interesting for me. The mini-boss of this area was just another Poltergeist, which was very strange since we started with one, then we got this random 3 sisters, almost portrait ghost type of boss, now back to a Poltergeist again, but this one's blue. So yeah, the whole theming around the ghost was a little strange here and just inconsistent. But this one was also pretty basic, where the Poltergeist would just kind of twirl up a tornado and start chucking bombs at you, and it's your job to just dodge the bombs. It's very easy, and then flash him in order to capture him. Also, prior to fighting this mini-boss, if you're too busy collecting treasures and gold around the area, you're forced to listen and suffer through this absolutely horrible sound that this Poltergeist makes. I hate it so much, and he doesn't shut up. I mean, literally for like 2 or 3 straight rooms, you hear him groaning and moaning around, and I don't even understand why they thought this would be okay. There's no pause. It's the same sound looped over and over and over again. Like, take a listen. Also, once again, there's a Polterpup mission here, which means, yep, you'll be going through those missions of chasing that stupid dog around all the floors and rooms that you previously already unlocked and looked through. This is just repetitive, and once again, I don't want to keep searching through the same rooms I've already been in, but this time, you're just fighting ghosts once again in those same rooms. I hate that. Your second Toad mission will be in this mansion as well, where you'll actually have to use Toad in order to get through the Clockworks, which I like they actually make him useful. Like, instead of him just following you around, you had to suck him up and toss him into certain areas in order to access new ways out. And yes, he still runs around like a little screaming kid, and you had to get his attention when all the ghosts leave in order to get him to follow you, but without that, this is actually a really good area that used Toad in a significant way for once. You can even use him to grab far off treasure that's far from Luigi's reach, and I thought that was a great usage of Toad. And then for the final boss of the Clockworks, unfortunately it wasn't really a boss. And like I said, after Haunted Towers, it just started to decrease, specifically for other players more than me, because I actually enjoy the next boss in the next world coming up, but we'll get there when we get there. But right now, we're talking about the fight against the clock tower itself. Yeah, you're fighting the clock tower, which means you're not even fighting him. Instead, you're just going through a boss gauntlet, where the hands will go from 1 to 12, giving you 12 rounds of fighting ghosts that you fought this entire time. This is fine for like a mission, but for a final boss of this entire area, I was kind of let down. Like, for the possessor ghost to possess anything, why the clock tower? And if you're going to possess the clock tower, have me fight the clock tower. For instance, there was a really cool mechanic they introduced in this area, being these little EGAD remote timed bombs, where if you flashed them, they'll stand up and start chasing in the direction where you flashed, and they'll detonate. Luigi was even able to suck them up and toss them, so using them to fight some type of giant clock tower, whether you shot them through the glass where the hands were or something, could have been really cool, and they detonated and blew up on the clock tower. But once again, not using any of the mechanics in this world was strange, and it felt very weird considering the fact that they did that with the first mansion. Why wasn't that returning? I don't know. The boss wasn't terrible. For a gauntlet, it was fun, but I really was expecting more still. Once again, for the old Clockworks, I felt like it was a theming thing that I really liked. I liked the feels of some of the areas that were really dark and creepy, and the same reason why I love Haunted Towers for its cool theming of a giant jungle with 2 giant towers interconnected, but they just didn't do much with the actual rooms and the actual missions. It just felt like, once again, busy work of looking for some specific objects that Polterpup stole, or trying to save Toad that's stuck in some area of this mansion. So, once again, hopefully the next area gets a lot better, and I'm just going to go ahead and say this right now, it definitely does. Next up, we have the Secret Mine, which is funny because I feel like we were technically already in a mine, but this one's more based on a snow-themed area, and I love snow-themed areas, and a snow-themed spooky area just sounded super exciting to me, and in fact, it is pretty exciting. You start off by walking outside of this snow-like cabin up in the mountains. I actually thought this location was really cool. There's tons of snow and ice all over the place, and it's just like you're really just infiltrating a cabin that's just completely empty on someone's vacation. Overall, the theming and the battles with the ghosts and even some of the puzzles in this area is really well done. My biggest complaint, and one of my only complaints with this entire area, is the fact that there's only 3 main missions, which kind of sucks because I really felt like they could have fleshed this world out and maybe had multiple cabins spread out across the mountaintops. You'll be spending most of your time outside or inside the one cabin or in the mines below it. For this to be the only mansion with 3 missions really made me feel like this part was rushed a bit, or maybe this world, since it was at the end of the game, just didn't get the full potential that it actually was originally planned to have. And since it's at the end of the game, they just said, nope, here's 3 missions and rushed us out. Due to this only being 3 missions, there's not a whole lot of backtracking. There's some for sure, but definitely not in a bad way. And there's no Polterpup missions to force you to backtrack and find the stupid dog once again. The first mission takes you through a good chunk of the area and immediately slaps you with a Toad mission, but it really isn't all that bad. This one was actually very much manageable, and and for a lot of the time, you're just kind of chucking him across ice, or simply defeating ghosts as he's running around the room screaming. He really doesn't get in the way too much here, and I didn't find this one to be stressful or give me a problem. With the second mission, it's one of the only missions in the game that actually connected with the overall story and what was actually going on here. It showed a tale of the ghosts actually being transformed by the Boos and King Boo himself into these pink crystals, where they were kind of hibernating before they would get extremely strong and powerful. And once you track down the crystals as you go deeper and deeper into the mines, you can see the ghost almost being enslaved by the Boos, forcing them to carry these crystals and harvest them from deep underground, which is actually pretty interesting, and I wish more missions actually involved the story, not just cleaning up spider webs or chasing after ghost pups. Now, the third mission is unfortunately a bit of a backtracker mission, but I think it's handled in a really good way. Instead of chasing after Polterpup, you have to chase down 3 ghosts, to me, that were themed after the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future, straight from the Scrooge story. And I really liked this, and you had to track them down and figure out where they were hiding, and actually get them to come out of their hiding spot in a unique way, and obviously take down the ghost in order to release a chain from the door. Once you got all 3 chains off, you got to man this really cool device in order to shoot fire logs and melt the ice to progress further within this mansion. Which also had Luigi kind of dangling from gondola pendulums that would go over the mountain tops. I once again really love the outside area. It kept that creepy aesthetic, but still let us go out and explore nature, and it's something that I want to see more in future Luigi games that we really didn't get to see much of in Luigi's Mansion 3. Being stuck in a hotel the entire time, I really wish we could have gone outside more. So if there was one thing I really would love to see, it's definitely exploring more of the haunted nature than just being inside all the time. Then that brings me to the main boss of the secret mine, and a lot of people hate this boss. I mean, it was infamous online when this game dropped originally on the 3DS, and people still hate it today, and it's one that I never could understand. In fact, I thought it was one of the better bosses in the game. It puts you on this strange snow device, allowing you to ski down the ice mountain and shoot bombs at the face of the ice monster, chipping away at its ice covering before eventually shooting a bomb into his mouth. Now, the key here is you have to shoot bombs and time them well in order to hit the ice panels, because if you miss and hit his face, he will charge you and waste time, and then your machine will eventually overheat. But I never really lost, and even if you do mess up, it restarts to current phase, and it doesn't really throw you off track. You shouldn't mess up more than 2 times, and it even gives you like 3 opportunities in order to line up your shots. It's a simple timing game, and I think it's handled really well, and it gives us something different that we really didn't get to explore with in this game yet. But maybe it's just me that didn't have a problem with this. Definitely let me know down below, because I thought this was actually really cool and a lot of fun. I mean, honestly, I hate to say it, but it felt like a get good skill issue moment for a lot of people where they just couldn't time up their shots. But yeah, I've never really had problems with this as a kid, and I definitely didn't now, and I still am having a blast playing against this boss every single time I run through this game. I thought it was a great ending to a pretty good mansion overall. And then we make it to the Treacherous Mansion, the final mansion of the game, and King Boo's main base of operations here. And dare I say, it is nearly perfect. It was everything that I wanted this game to be for a 3DS Luigi's Mansion, wrapped into one mansion, and I really just wish the rest of the game could have this much detail and fun mission design like this mansion had. For the first mission, your entire time is just finding a way to the inside. Polterpup is there, so technically it is a Polterpup chase, but you're chasing him through an entirely new area that's specific to the first mission and the first mission only. That is a good way to have Polterpup take something and track him down, not going through areas that you've already previously explored. So you'll be going through the outside of this giant treacherous mansion, trying to make your way to the front door just to see him take the key underground, and you'll be going through tons of underground catacombs and confusing passageways, kind of like the Lost Woods from The Legend of Zelda, trying to find the right path. And there are ways to find this right path, such as messing with the knights in the hallways and seeing which way they would point, or just tracking the footsteps with your dark light. This was done extremely well, and I love this whole underneath the mansion area before even really diving into the mansion itself, which Mission 2 actually allows you to go into the mansion and explore the first main floor. The mansion itself felt like a giant real mansion this time around, almost like a mansion combined with a museum, and I really loved it. Like some rich guy lived here and started collecting artifacts and theming each room around a specific era, which reminded me a lot obviously of Luigi's Mansion 3 and made me wonder if they decided to design the entire hotel off of this one mansion. I love the different themed rooms, and they're themed after the past mansions that you've already explored, like snow, sand, forest, and even a library just like the Gloomy Manor. Another complaint I had with this secret mine is they introduced these EGAD portals that you could flash and walk through in order to get to a new area, and it wasn't completely fleshed out and they didn't use them that much for the rest of the missions in the secret mine, but they are used to the max potential here. Each and every single room has one of these portals that lead back to the main lobby, and it's your job to use all these portals in tandem in order to carry different items out from one portal and take it into a room of the next portal, which is absolutely genius. And you have to visit all these rooms before you can even activate the portal, causing you to have to go through the mansion and explore before getting down to the puzzle solving. And I think this is such a great idea. I loved the puzzles here, taking a log in order to catch it on fire in the desert, but then you had to take that log into the snow region in order to melt some ice. I thought this was done excellently, and there was tons of secrets to be found, and thanks to the more open-ended nature of this mission, you really didn't miss anything. Nothing was ever left behind that you had to go walk all the way back and find. Everything was kind of more open, and all 4 floors, or what should I say, all 4 rooms, were accessible at any time during this mansion, and even the mansion after, because with Mission 3, it now gives you access to the top floor, with the second floor opening more rooms for you to explore in as well. And with these new rooms come actually new themed areas as well, one themed after pirates and one themed after space, which once again was just super cool. With this second floor and second set of rooms, you also had more portals, so that way you could use more items in each of these rooms with the other rooms in order to find even more hidden treasure, such as the balloon berry, which allowed you to actually float to the ceiling of pretty much every single room that you've already explored to find even more treasure and even more areas that you haven't explored before. I mean, seriously, it absolutely blew my mind that Nintendo didn't want to just do a formula like this from the very beginning. Shoot, even if they had to do a mission structure, why didn't they just give us a giant area with a new area to explore every single mission? Or just, you know what, strip the mission design. Why couldn't they just let us explore these areas at our own pace and just make them more open-ended areas with portrait ghosts thrown into some of these rooms? And this could have been a fantastic game, and I feel like that's the only thing holding it back is that mission structure and just the soul of not having specific characters like portrait ghosts to carry the story further. Mission 4 brings us to a halt in the progress in order to have a boss fight against a giant Boo. I'm not sure if this is actually Boo losses from Luigi's Mansion 1, but nevertheless, I also really love this fight, and this is another one that a lot of people online weren't a big fan of. Personally, I thought it was handled really well, slinging the big Boo and getting that satisfaction of it popping from the drill on the front end of the train, and then tracking down each ghost in order to fling them into the train cars I thought was super satisfying, and I never really found it to be all that difficult. You just needed some good aim and timing. Once again, it seems like aiming and timing isn't in the Luigi's Mansion category for fans, because it seems like this is the 2 bosses that fans hate the most, but it's definitely the 2 that I think I loved the most. I thought these bosses were great, and I really liked the big Boo battle here. Mission 5 was a super fun and super challenging ghost hunt through the entirety of the mansion, and really opened up every single room and made it all accessible from one mission, which once again kind of gave me that classic Luigi's Mansion feel. This was technically a backtracking mission, but it also was a mission that reminded me of the blackout from the original Luigi's Mansion when the lightning struck the mansion, and everything was a lot more difficult because ghosts would spawn every which way. It's pretty much the same situation where ghosts were spawning like mad in all the different rooms all over the mansion, and it was your job to go to these rooms and capture the ghosts, putting you at a challenging gauntlet at the very end at the top of the mansion, which I absolutely loved. And believe it or not, this gauntlet was the very first time I think in the entire game where I genuinely had some struggles the first time I played this, and playing it again on Nintendo Switch still proved to be quite a challenge how fast that they throw these ghosts at you. Mission 6 is another boss fight, this time against the last Possessor Ghost, and it's against some knights. Once again, I feel like I'm just on opposite pages with a lot of the community and the bosses, because I know a lot of people love this boss, but I always felt it to be boring. I mean, you're fighting knights, which you already did in the first mission of this mansion, and it's pretty basic. You just let them slowly run towards you and pull a carpet from underneath their feet. It never gets difficult because they swing their weapons so incredibly slow, you almost have to try to take damage. And when the big knight comes, all you have to do is get both feet on the carpet and then rip the carpet from underneath it. It's not like Luigi's doing anything super crazy here or utilizing any type of crazy new mechanic, and I don't know, it never felt as satisfying as people made it. It was super cool to see the giant knight take over the entire mansion, but personally, I thought they could have done more with this one and utilized more things that we've seen throughout the mansion. Like, how come we've never utilized a single balloon berry for a single boss fight? This just didn't make sense to me. I mean, I even came up with a concept with a giant knight where you would use these balloon berries, which once again were used in various different mansions in the Treacherous Mansion. In total, it'd been really cool to use that in the boss fight and float up to the top of the knight and have to fight him up there on some ledges or something, or take out its arms. They could have done so much more. But of course, that brings me to the final boss of the game, and that is against King Boo himself. To me, this is honestly probably my favorite of the 3 final bosses that we have gotten, and honestly, I've never really been blown out of the water by any of the final bosses in the Luigi's Mansion series, but this one was pretty good, and it's mostly because of one scene. Overall, your job is to get King Boo to slam giant spiked balls up into the air and eventually have them come raining down on top of his head, allowing you to suck him up, but you'll have to do so through 3 phases. But it's the 2 chase phases that really make this battle really amped up my anxiety. Running through these dark hallways as drawers were swinging open and giant ice pillars were in the way and rotating escalators going up and down, it was a lot to pay attention to while also running from a giant rolling bowling ball King Boo, and it definitely freaked me out even today like it did back then on the 3DS when I was a child. It is extremely anxiety filling, and I love that, and it really did get me engaged and intense with this boss battle, and I really enjoyed those scenes. I wish there was another one because 2 was just not enough. I wanted to keep running through those hallways away from King Boo. They should make a whole game mode about that because, man, that could be a fun, like, endless running mode. But overall, this wasn't really a difficult boss battle or anything that was too troubling, and the story wraps up pretty quickly and pretty neat. Of course, Luigi saves Mario and all the Toads, and they put the Dark Moon back together and slap it back into the sky, making all the ghosts nice and friendly again. And then the day is saved, Luigi keeps Polterpup and goes back into his home for a nice peaceful rest. That is until the gang decides to go take a fun, relaxing trip to a hotel. Yeah, please, Luigi, just stay at home. Turn the TV off, take everything out the house, just stay in bed. Or at least keep your brother in bed, Luigi, like goodness gracious. But overall, for a quick verdict, I thought this game had its issues with its mansions here and there. The music wasn't anything special, just very much the same song repeated over and over and over again. The boss battles were definitely a hit or a miss, but mostly a miss for me. And overall, the mansions were nothing super special to write home about, except for a few exceptions, like the awesome snow cabin theme of the Secret Mine and just how well put together the final mansion of the game, the Treacherous Mansion, was put together as well. I know this is just a second game in a series about Luigi going around sucking up ghosts to save his brother stuck in the picture frame, but I kind of wish they went a little deeper and added some new story elements to really drive home a unique story instead of just Mario in picture frame. And once again, they would do the same thing with the following up game being Luigi's Mansion 3. But overall, I think this game and its mansions designs just got way too much hate. Yes, the mission structure does drag things on, but I still thought each and every single one of the mansions offered some type of fun variety of gameplay, and obviously it had me constantly looking for secrets and collectibles, which I'll get into here soon, but I never found myself being bored with any of the missions or any of the stages in this game. It constantly kept me entertained, and I always wanted to jump into the next mission after finishing one up. But with that being the main course of the game, what else does Luigi's Mansion 2 bring to the table? Well, let's get into the collectibles. After after the credits officially roll, there's still things to go back and actually do within the past missions, and it's not always the greatest, but one of the things I actually do enjoy with Luigi's Mansion 2 and 3 are the new gems. Each mansion has a total of 13 gems hidden throughout its various different missions, and this is both a good thing and a bad thing. The bad part is it's definitely based on mission structure, meaning there's sometimes only a specific number of gems that you can get in a single mission. So if you're missing like the 5th gem in the lineup and you're already on mission 4, odds are you're gonna have to go back to a previous mission like 2 or 3 in order to find that gem that you're missing, which means yes, you're going to have to play through the entire mission from start to finish as well, which could get very repetitive and very boring. Instead of being able to just search the whole mansion at your own leisure and find the gems, very similar to how you can in Luigi's Mansion 3. Let me tell you right now, a majority of these gems are extremely well hidden. The only mansion I did not have a problem with was the old Clockworks, where I was able to pretty much find every single gem my first run through. But every other mansion, including Gloomy Manor, gave me some type of problem. There was times where you had to look through a mirror in order to find a gem hidden up on a windowsill stuck behind a spider web, which is just crazy. Continuing with the Gloomy Manor gems, this one plagued me the most on both consoles. Like literally, I could never find this secret door behind the fish tank. It just never looked like a door in that dark hallway. There's another one where you have to grab a model of a planet and just chuck it across the room in order to pop out a gem, which is also something that's extremely wild. The Haunted Towers had one that was just evil. You would go through this hallway area the first mission of the game, but had to return like the 3rd mission in order to find a specific gem that's hidden in one of these flowers that are trying to eat you. And you'll naturally don't want to come back here because you'll think, for one, I don't have to, and for two, the door at the end of this hallway is closed, so I don't need to go that way. But nope, you need to go all the way back through a hallway that you've already visited in the past mission just to get this gem, which is one of the things that I hate. There's a gem that could be kind of tricky in the secret mine where you have to look at it at the end of a wall that's in some type of ice creature's mouth, and you have to follow the bat that takes it as it drops it into a nearby barrel. Another gem that tricked me up in the secret mine was one that you had to look up. I mean, you couldn't see it in any possible way unless you looked up, and there's no reason to look up in this room. In fact, there's hardly any reason to look up at the ceiling in any room in this game. One of the most hardest gem collections of any game that I had to do was definitely in the Treacherous Mansion. I thought I was doing really well just to find that I missed like 4 in the first mission. There's so many secret exits in those random hallways and different little exit points that you gotta find through secret doors in order to find these gems, including the very front entrance of the whole mansion itself, where you had to shine your dark light at a statue because there is an invisible chain hanging out of its mouth that you need to open up a secret section in the staircase. How is anyone possibly supposed to know that? And another one that got me pretty good was having to use the berries in order to fly to the top of pretty much all the rooms to find the secret areas. And yeah, this one wasn't as bad, but still was something that eluded me at the time. As tough as these gems were, I still always love collecting these, and just my only problem with them is having to go back to previous rooms that you've already completed when there was nothing there at first, but now they added something there in the next mission. That's just never a fun time to me. Not to mention, it almost makes you have to rush through these missions because there's something else for you to do with each mission. There is a level rank. At the end of each mission, you'll get a rank based on how well you did. This is based on your clear time, the number of ghosts that you captured, the amount of damage that you took, and all the treasure that you've collected to accumulate to one final ranking. You can get a 1-star, a 2-star, or a 3-star rank. In some of these missions, that 3-star rank takes everything in order to get it. And it sucks because it kind of rushes you in this game. Luigi's Mansion games are fun because you can take your time, find treasure, and slowly go through each room at your own pace, but this game kind of makes you rush to get that 3-star medal, and obviously doing all that along the lines of still not taking much damage and finding all the secret ghosts and collecting your gems so you don't have to go back and do it. So there's a lot that goes into this 100%. Each mission also has a boo for you to collect, including the first 2 missions, which means you have to go back and find those boos after completing the missions for a second time because you don't get the dark light until that 3rd mission, which is annoying. But also, once you collect all the boos, you'll get a bonus mission at the end of each world, and that's also nothing special either. I didn't even record gameplay of this because it's just not even entertaining. You're just speedrunning through the mansion trying to go to different rooms and collect ghosts like in the Scarescraper mode, so yeah, it's nothing really added to the game that much. I honestly wish those bonus missions was just like a collection of those little bonus rooms that you get to play in. Some of the times to get a gem. That would have been cool if it was like 10 of them, like the Mystery House marathons in Mario 3D World would have been pretty cool. But after you've done all of that and you still want to continue playing this game, you have the Scare Scraper mode, where you're going online, or you can play with yourself or maybe with some friends, where you go through a certain set of floors in the Scare Scraper. You can pick as low as 5 and as high as 25. And I do believe after you complete 25 floors in any of the game modes, you do get an endless mode, and you can change the difficulty as well and the type of mode that you're playing. In the game mode Hunter, your job is to go around and collect as many ghosts as possible until the ghost meter is complete. Once you've completed all the ghosts in an area, you're able to move on, which it's pretty simple. It's just like the base game, but kind of giving you a time limit to hurry up and rush through it, which is not terrible in this game mode because I don't necessarily need to stop and collect anything. In the rush game mode, it has you and your teammates rushing through a mansion, going through doors, trying to find the exit. And once somebody finds it, everyone else has to get to that room. So you'll be using notifications like, hey, over here, in order to get everybody over there. Now, the problem with this is sometimes someone can get stuck. And if they get stuck, there's not a good way to tell people because you don't have a lot of prompts. And a lot of the time, your teammates just don't know what's going on. And I found a lot of times there was like 3 people waiting in a room at the finish line for me, yet I was stuck in another room and I needed help, but they didn't understand it. And I kept spamming help, but they wouldn't come help. Personally, I felt like this game mode was definitely better alone because goodness gracious, some of the players that I played with, they genuinely just did not know what to do. And the final game mode is Chase, which is a big polter pup hunt, where there will be multiple polter pups all over the mansion, and you'll have to use your dark light in order to chase down the tracks and find them in each of the rooms, which is pretty cool because you can all break away into different rooms to try to find them, and I felt like this one was probably one of my favorites to play casually because it was a little bit different than the rest and had you actually looking for stuff and had that Luigi's Mansion mystery vibe to it, and I enjoyed that a lot, especially as everybody was in different rooms checking their rooms for polter pup. There's also power-ups that you can collect, like a super vacuum to suck up ghosts faster. You also have dark light glasses, so that way the dark light function is always working without you having to shine your light, so you can see everything that's hidden in a room, and there's other things along the way, but overall it's a pretty basic mode. Now on the final floor, you will always fight a poltergeist, and it's just a bunch of ghosts trying to attack you as the poltergeist is flying back and forth on the roof, going to the brick stacks in order to chuck a brick at you. But yeah, all you have to do is just keep spamming your flash, and that's normally what happened. Everybody on the roof would just start flashing in an area, and eventually we would find them and suck them up pretty quickly. Now I'm very OCD in nature, and that goes with the games that I play as well. I feel like I have to 100% collect absolutely everything and do everything that the game has to offer, even if it's not counted as part of the 100% completion. And this is one time where I felt like I had to put that on the backlog because there is so many ghosts that you need to capture for your collection in the Scare Scraper mode. This video is from Retro Archive on YouTube, and in his description he stated that it took him over 40 hours of Scare Scraper gameplay in order to collect all of these ghosts. What are these ghosts, you might ask? Well, these are special versions of regular ghosts that play as mini bosses within the Scare Scraper, and every 5 floors you get to fight one of these, if it's not the final floor, however. Now overall, these mini bosses are just bigger versions of the regular ghosts that you find throughout your playthrough, but they have some little gimmick to them, like maybe some will throw bombs, or some will move faster, or some will do some specific thing that's a lot different than their regular counterpart, and obviously they have a bunch of health when you go to take them out. And the ghosts aren't anything special, they just wear some type of new body paint or costume on, like a football player or like a ghoul or something, or they'll just decorate themselves to look a little bit different. But the problem is, if you want to collect all of them, there are 45 unique boss ghosts to find, and you have to look at every 5th floor, which means you don't get them every floor. You have to suffer through 5 floors of doing the same thing over and over and over again just to get one of the boss ghosts, and you have to do that 45 times. Plus, because apparently what I've read online is you're not guaranteed to get a new boss ghost every single time. It could be one that you've already received, which is, that sounds like a nightmare. Now I've only gotten like 10 of these, but I found the quickest way is just to go into the rush mode alone and just rush through all the floors as quickly as possible, because you don't have to collect ghosts, you don't have to search for anything or collect money or find a key. All you're doing is getting to the room that allows you to escape to the next floor. But still, there's a lot of times I still ran out of time on like the 4th floor and had to do it all over again with really no progress. But yeah, this is just not worth it, and I feel like Nintendo just implemented this to get people to play the game a lot longer. Hey, when you're playing playing Scarescraper with your friends, try to collect all these ghosts while you're doing it. It's probably not really recommended for you to try to collect all of these, but it is part of the collection, and there are slots for all the ghosts, so you're just looking at these empty slots saying, I need to fill that, but I just couldn't. This is something that I'm going to have to do slowly over the course of a couple years, because I have no interest in finding 45 different ghosts, having to search up every 5 floors. It also doesn't help that you see like the same set of rooms every single time. I believe this was fixed in Luigi's Mansion 3's version, but yeah, it's the same looking floors, the same looking rooms, and you're fighting the bosses in the same looking areas, and it just gets so repetitive. So as far as replayability goes, there's actually a lot of stuff to replay and visit in Luigi's Mansion 2, but is it fun stuff? Not necessarily. And you're probably going to be going back to past missions, trying to perfect your runs, just going back, collecting more gold, collecting more ghosts, and trying not to take damage, and also just playing Scarescraper a billion times to collect all 45 of the boss ghosts. So there's stuff to do, like I said, but it's stuff that a lot of people probably won't want to do. Personally, I think this would have been an easier fix if there was just a separate game mode on the Scarescraper, like a 4th game mode for just battling boss ghosts, and you could just jump in and battle ghosts, and maybe they all have a little slightly different ability, which makes them more unique. But yeah, that would have fixed having to go through all those rooms just to collect a ghost that's very much the same as their original counterpart. So personally, I just wanted to stick with collecting all the gems, getting a 3-star rank on all the missions, and collecting all the booze. By the way, I hate this animation of what this ghost does with its fingers. Like, what is that? But as you don't really get anything for collecting all the ghosts, for collecting all the gems in each area, you'll get a specific cool trophy of Luigi in each area that you collected all those gems in. So at least that's worth it, right? Not really. I went into Luigi's Mansion 2 kind of upset because I remember this game not being the greatest. That mission structure really did slog the game down, and it didn't have that open-endedness that the 1st and 3rd games did to an extent. And after going back, I still kind of felt the same way. It still was a lot more fun than I imagined it being and that I remembered it being back on the 3DS days, but it still had its same issues that overall made this game not as enjoyable as the 1st and 3rd games to me. That mission structure really is that bad, especially when it comes to collecting things and going back to past rooms multiple times just to find a gem or look for a gem that could or could not be there. The mansions as well were okay in design, nothing super spectacular, and definitely held back based on the fact that there were no portrait ghosts, just Poltergeist and the same colored ghost that you'd run into over and over again, plus the Polterpup missions that would spawn every so often. The boss battles were also really not great, having us fight realistic things that have been possessed by these possessor ghosts, and they never really put up much of a fight, and the lack of in-game mechanics used for the boss battles was severe. I was still very surprised that none of the things that we were doing within the respected bosses' mansions were included in the boss battle itself. The story was pretty basic, but it's expected in a Luigi's Mansion game, and the post-game is something, to say the least. There's stuff to do, but I don't want to do it. So the question is Luigi's Mansion 2 really that bad? Well, this game for sure could have been polished, at least for the HD version on the Switch, and it could have fixed some issues that the original game had, like random pop-in and some weird animation moments, and some glitches that people have been complaining about online. But yeah, it seems as if this game was rushed, which is weird because it was announced almost a year before it would even come out, so I'm a little confused by how this game released in such a strange state. But overall, Luigi's Mansion 2 probably should have just stayed on the 3DS as Dark Moon. I don't think we needed this game back, especially after coming off of such a massive high of Luigi's Mansion 3. This just wasn't the game that we needed, but we have it, we can play it, and it's still a good game. I would never say it's terrible or even bad, and doesn't deserve to be amongst the categories that some people place it in, like Hey Pikmin and Metroid Prime Federation Force. But at the end of the day, Luigi's Mansion got better. Luigi's Mansion 3 was so much better in every single way, and still one of my favorite games of all time, so that's definitely a positive. But I still do think that Dark Moon, or Luigi's Mansion 2, whatever you want to call it, is still that black sheep of the Luigi's Mansion series. So thankfully, we live in an era where it seems like that stupid mission structure is gone, we have Portrait Ghost back, and a game with fun collectibles in the form of gems making a return in a great way. Luigi's Mansion is definitely back with 3, and I can't wait to see where they go with 4.